This video contains a review of some of the prerequisite knowledge for the pre-calculus course. The example that we're going to talk about right now is the method for solving quadratic equations. So here's a quadratic equation, 2t squared minus 4t equals 8. It's quadratic in the sense that it has degree 2 on the t. So the general strategy for solving quadratic equations is really same as the initial strategy for solving any polynomial equation. Our goal is to write the polynomial equal to 0 and then hopefully factor the polynomial into as many factors as we can, and then we can take advantage of the law of numbers that says that if a product of numbers is equal to 0, then one of the numbers has to be 0. So from this we would know that if this product is 0, then one of the factors has to be 0, and that would allow us then to solve several smaller equations and build our solution set. So that's the strategy, which means in the first step here we need to rewrite our equation by subtracting 8 from both sides so that it has the form polynomial equals 0. Then we set to trying to factor this, and you can see that the first thing we do with factoring is try to factor out any common terms, common factors of each of the terms. Oops. And at this point, we realize that this is not going to work out. There are no numbers, no whole numbers that would multiply together to be minus 4 and also sum to be minus 2. So we're not going to be able to factor this, which means our general polynomial strategy has sort of gone out the window. Fortunately, with a quadratic equation, we have a backup plan. If the original strategy of factoring doesn't work with the quadratic equation, we can apply the quadratic formula. To do that, we would like this equation to be as simple as possible, so I will do the step of dividing both sides by 2, because that'll just make the numbers smaller. And when we have to plug numbers into a formula, we'd always prefer to plug smaller ones in than larger ones, because the arithmetic will be easier. So dividing by 2 makes sense on both sides, and then we're left with this quadratic equation. As we said, this does not factor, and so now I'll just use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula says that t is the opposite of b, so that would be the opposite of negative 2 is 2, plus or minus. And then under the square root sign, we'll have b squared, so negative 2 squared, minus 4ac. So for the a here, coefficient of the t squared term is just 1. Right? We don't write that down in the polynomial typically, but it is 1. And then c is negative 4. So if you don't remember the quadratic formula, that is super easy to Google, so you can look that up. But this is what the quadratic formula will predict. b minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So this is twice 1. Now we can simplify what's under the square root sign. I guess I won't ignore the 2. So 2 plus or minus the square root. Under here, minus 2 squared is 4, and then 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. So I have positive 4 minus negative 16, which is the same as 2 plus 16, or 20. And again, I'm dividing by 2. So that answer is actually fine. If you know something about radicals and recognize that there's a factor of 4 under here, you could simplify that a little more, but that's perfectly fine. I would rather you not simplify your answer than to invent some crazy rules and simplify it incorrectly.